So we've been having this conversation ongoing about when individual units or people within a soul family start to connect and become more of a cohesive platform for individual beings across a soul group or a soul platform, that an entire soul group may start working cohesively and working as a single soul, regardless of where and when and how those individual units happen to be incarnated, whether they are physical or not, or something else entirely, that a soul group begins to work sympathetically and in some form of cohesion or a cohesive focus. So we do that ongoing in our world. We are regularly kind of feeling for and working around those who are part of our immediate cell, our immediate soul. So part of Aeon Soul is to do with that, and so a lot of you guys will be starting to connect with people in this space, and of course just in your own life and in your own other circles, to make these connections with those within your cell and with other units within your immediate cell, and to start working to regain your sense of cohesive family or cohesive soul. And that kind of happens over time. It takes whatever time it does. There's understandings and contracts and skills and various things embedded within that will be catalysts for you making connections with your soul group or not, or those things happening around certain times and having a timing component. There's lots of stuff around that. But I guess we were talking within the context of that about then, I guess, the next rung up of that concept, when individual units become a cohesive soul or soul group, and then what happens when soul groups start to cohesively work together and sympathetically kind of align and start working group on group as well. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about that and kind of the next level of soul group cohesion and soul group mission focus. So the model I'm going to give you is really kind of simple, and it's the model of the apex or of the pyramid. And if you can imagine a triangle or a pyramid, on the top point there is one, then fractals or manifests into 2 into 4, 4 into 8, 8 into 16 and so forth, all the way to the bottom of the pyramid jar. And so that is how it multiplies and fractals in that way. So if you can imagine that triangle with the very top being a 1, next level 2, next level 4, 8, so forth, you're looking at that triangle with a whole range of lines kind of going down it, and a whole range of horizontal lines going across, which kind of form bands. So the very base of the pyramid will be one band, and then the band immediately above it will have about half the amount of dot points. Then the band above that will have about half, and that's how the connection is. So you can kind of watch the connection in terms of a row, a horizontal row of how many dot points, or you can watch the connection of the drop line and through the various lines where a line will make a connection from point to point to point. So soul groups are like that in relation to our overall relationship to God. So you hear me say this all the time. A soul is a cell in the body of God. And so if you think about it like that, within a cell, there are various ingredients and sub-ingredients within a cell that make up the cell. And all of those ingredients have the interest and the well-being of the general organism at heart. And so in this sense, we're talking about God. So the cell in God's bodies, the meat of those cells, the ingredients, are there to perform all of the functions of the cell as directed by the overall organism of God, as the organism dictates its needs. So individual cells will organize themselves like that and perform like that according to their individual elements and functions as directed by the signals sent by the overall organism or by the body of God. So an individual cell will structure and organise itself in that way, and of course at the next level, individual cells will then begin to be organised and functional in that way as well, again as directed by signals sent by the full organism, or by, in this sense, the body of God. So two cells and a group of cells will start working together. And we notice this in our physical body when a whole range of things will happen. When we receive an injury, a whole lot of cells will be directed to a point of the body to commence healing. Our body directs and redirects cells to perform a range of different functions within the system that our system requires at any given time. Largely it is automated. We don't need to think about sending cells around our body to perform functions or to program our cells to do a certain thing. It's all kind of within us and largely automated, that the ingredients of individual cells will kick in, the ones that are most needed. Individual cells themselves, according to their own qualities, will then group together according to what is most needed and what the organism needs, and so forth and so on. So as then cells start coming together, cells will start performing a function on the overall organism, and then cells will turn into veins, muscles, organs, and so forth, until we start getting to the main physical body of the organism. So in terms of cells being a soul group, a soul being a cell in the body of God, cells do not go up infinitely and stay like cells. Just like a cell, at some point will group together to form a organ or form a physical appendage or a part of your body. It is just a composition of cells according to intelligent design. So at some point cells make way for other type of life. So we're not in a soul group sense all the way up to the point of God. At some point the construct of a soul group, or the way that we see it, will change. And this is when we start hitting serious unity consciousness, to the point that we cannot conceive of in this way, because we're still thinking as individual ingredients of one cell only, and there are an infinite number of cells in the organism of God that can perform an infinite number of functions, and so forth and so on, just like in our own body. It really is the right analogy to understand how cells operate, how they function, how they work together. In the biological kind of analogy of that. Okay, so back to fluffy bunny stuff, which is really about the original question: what do soul groups do? When soul groups start getting together, what happens? What is some of that work? And so, I guess from a general kind of spiritual perspective and a general evolutionary perspective, we need to look at what's basically going on the planet at this time and within our species as a whole, all of the big stuff. And so regardless of where you come from with your frame of thinking or your beliefs or whatever, there's a couple of things that are relatively across the board that we can agree on. There are massive changes going on with the planet physically and energetically, whatever the hell that means, and changes going on with us as a species and other species of animals physically and energy and so forth. So all of those changes you might put under the umbrella of evolution. We are becoming more than we are and more than we have been. We can call it like that because it's as broad as anything and should accommodate everyone's version of what that means. Whether you think we're just evolving physically, whether we're ascending, whatever that means, we're becoming more. So that's pretty normal. And so individual soul groups are now starting to work on the planet in teams of certainly 2 or more entire cells for all of those purposes, for the health and functionality and stability of the physical planet to host the work that we are doing. So some soul groups are here for the integrity of the host space and working on and maintaining the integrity of the host space so we may work here in this host space. So some folks are just keen on working on Gaia space and all that entails. And that can entail anything from doing cleanup and basic health work, so doing some repair work around the energetic grid or the crystalline grid or any parts of the geometric form of the planet. Others might be planting seeds and embedding and creating timer releases and implants for future growth and future work within this template of the Earth. All sorts of things can be happening on the planet to maintain the health of the planet and its integrity to do what it is that we're trying to do in this space, to maintain it as a good platform, if you like. Other soul groups are working specifically on humanity and the conscious species. So some soul groups are working on plant life and mineral life, for example, and making sure that that transition is working, that certain energies can leave cleanly from this place or transform or reveal something new. Same as human consciousness. Obviously, as the predominant physical species on this planet, there is a vested interest in us relatively keeping our shit together, being fairly safe while we're here, and in a broad sense just not fucking up and staying on track. So there are multiple soul groups working cohesively around the human state, psychology, development, DNA activation for next level, all of that sort of stuff. So, I mean, in terms of what soul groups do, it's fairly simple when you start thinking of, well, what are the macro factors of our life as we know it, and what's the important stuff? And so really the important stuff is the integrity and the progress of the planet, which is related to the integrity and progress of all the species on it and related to it. In a nutshell, that's largely what soul groups will begin to focus on in this space, because that's what keeps things rolling, and it keeps us growing, and it keeps us evolving. So, I mean, you can use your imagination as to the individual tasks that may be entailed around that and what that might mean. So, again, if we can move between the biology and the fluffy bunny analogies, the biology of individual ingredients of a cell come together to form one cohesive cell. When a whole bunch of cells are now working functionally individually, those individual cells will start clustering and grouping together as being signalled by the overall organism to perform various functions, you know, to grow a limb, to fight disease, to do whatever it does in the overall body. And so cells, I guess, in the overall platform of life now have a vested interest in the organism of God as a whole, in the functionality of the organism of life as a whole, not just on chatting to each other as two individual units or ingredients within a soul group. And not even just the novelty of meeting another soul group and other members in it, you know. The step past that is that once we kind of get over the novelty of our job and of our colleagues, we get on with it. And getting on with it means now specifically focusing on the health and well-being and goals of the organism from a cell point of view or from a soul group point of view. I hope that gives you some clarity around seeing the analogy of that. A soul is a cell in the body of God. If you wonder what is a soul group and what is a soul and how does it work, what is its purpose and what is the next level, work within that analogy and it will start to make a little bit more sense for you. But I hope that's moved us on as a bit of a part B, and let's just keep talking about soul groups and stuff.